Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Friday Night Sport. I'm your host, Dakir Dawood. My favorite time of the week, and I hope it is yours. This week, we've got a very special guest. He goes by the name of Neil Tovey. He is a 1996 AFCON winner with the South African football team. He's also the former director of football at SAFA as well. So, yep, he's got quite a big CV, and we'll be having him shortly. I'm looking forward to it. If you have any questions at home and for Neil, you can pop them down in the comment section below. Remember to interact with us. Also, drop a like, drop a comment, drop a share. I mean, if you want to start a watch party, nobody's stopping you. I mean, it is lockdown, and we might as well have some sort of a party on a Friday evening. I'm looking forward to this interview. It's going to be super, super, super cool. One of the legends of South Africa, we're going to blend the past with the present, just so that we, as the youth of today, know where we're going with the future of sport in this country. Good evening, Neil. Thank you for joining me this evening. It looks like we're still having a bit of technical issues there, but we will have Neil on the line in just a bit. Yeah, but so far it's been such an amazing week. I mean, we're so blessed with everything that's happening around us. We know that the Proteas have gone into camp. They will be entertaining England, who have arrived in South Africa. They currently settled in Cape Town, where they will be playing their first ODI on next week. Yes, there is COVID cases in the South African camp, but we do know that we will hope, for that matter, that they disappear and those players recover, gain full recovery, and South Africa can then make their way to the pitch where they entertain the English. On the football side of things, international break is done. What a relief. I mean, Liverpool have so many injuries, so many COVID cases. How will they bounce back come this weekend when they do take on Leicester? And then on the rugby front, the Bulls have been crowned the 2020 Super Rugby unlocked champions after the Sharks and the Stormers game couldn't take place due to COVID protocols being put in place. One of the Sharks players have tested positive, and this obviously makes the Sharks unavailable to play this match, which was supposed to take place tomorrow evening. Quite a sad situation. Yes, the Bulls have another feather in their cap, and I mean they do hold the title of being the most crowned South African team in the Super Rugby competition. And they will obviously hold that crown for a very long time. And that record, seeing that South Africa have agreed not to play Super Rugby come 2021. Yes, let's try Neil Tovey one more time. And hopefully this time we can hear him loud and clear.
Yeah, good evening, Takir.
Hey. All good, thanks, man. How you doing? Thanks for joining me this evening. Really, really appreciate it.
Sorry about all the technical problems, but I'm here.
Well, here you are now, the man of the moment. Neil, let's get straight into it. I mean, you one of the most renowned people in South African football for your presence that you had on the pitch, and yet, yes, on the pitch and off the pitch, more recently with SAFA. Neil, your love for football, where exactly did it start?
It's from a young age. I was playing football from 5 years old. But I think because I had an elder brother, Mark, 7 years my senior. So 7 years is quite a big gap. So he was already playing football when I was a young baby even. So obviously I just grew up with the family playing football. And loved it.
Yeah, I mean, then you've obviously been a pioneer in getting South Africa through very, very difficult times in sport. But I'm sure we can get to that a bit later. Neil, more recently, you were the technical director of SAFA. What exactly was your role and what responsibilities did you have in that role?
Yeah, it's a huge responsibility. You know, it was SAFA's first official technical director in terms of from a FIFA perspective and a CAF perspective, because I was asked in 2015 if I'd like to take up the job, and it was a 5-year contract until 2020, end of June 2020. And what it entails, I had 7 different divisions underneath me, national teams, which there were 9 of, I had the coach education. I had women's football. I had youth football. I had grassroots football. I had medical. I had refereeing. So a number, and obviously just making sure that whatever's in the game of football in this country was sort of getting taken care of.
That's certainly a lot of responsibilities on one man's shoulders. And I mean, once you accepted the offer, you certainly had goals that you wanted to achieve and where you wanted to take South African football, knowing that the state of football when you took over, quite a difficult period, and to bring them up to a level where they are today. Do you think that you achieved some of your goals while you were in that position?
Look, I'm never a person that's satisfied totally with anything I've done in life. I've never been totally satisfied, and that's why I suppose you have to, if you want to achieve higher heights and get to better things, you have to never be satisfied. And but I did set myself goals. I wanted, obviously, one was to get the national teams in a better position, and I'll come back to that soon. And two was to try to get a structure in place where football at grassroots and at the lower leagues could get better developed in terms of coach education and making sure some leagues, more leagues were put into place, and then from the high performance level that the what do you call it, the colleges playing at higher levels, the academies and playing specialized leagues. So coming back to the first issue, which I think it was achieved in some way. I mean, in my tenure as a technical director, there's never been so much success in terms of qualification for major competitions, and there never has been in the history of SAFA. And I don't only contribute to myself, obviously not. But the under-17 national team qualified for the World Cup, men's. The under-17 women's qualified for the World Cup. The under-20 men's qualified for the World Cup back-to-back. The under-23s qualified for back-to-back Olympics. The women's team qualified for AFCONs, obviously, and the World Cup women's. And the men's then qualified for their first tournament in a long time in the African Cup of Nations. So, yes, there was still more I wanted to make sure happened, that when we did get into those competitions, that the performance in those competitions could take us into the knockout stages and like. In terms of development, I put into place 18 provincial technical officers, which was a man and a woman in each province, in the 9 provinces, which came to the 18. They were the technical directors in their provinces that would then go about in their province and do what a technical director does at the head office, making sure leagues were getting played, get the coach education situation, try to get that sorted, getting more coaches developed, getting high performance, which was critical in terms of, I spoke about the academies and just the better equipped teams play in a higher level, because you need to play strength versus strength. So there's all these that were getting put into place. Was a lot of areas that were disjointed down in the provinces that these provincial technical officers were going to take care of. One of them was to get technical committees within their provinces. At first, you got to remember this was never getting done. And in the provincial structures, they first encountered a lot of head banging. Why? Yeah, what you're trying to do, and because it's sort of it proved a lot of work was not getting done down, or essential work was not getting done down in the provinces. Now, I'm not there to badmouth, but yes, work was getting done. But if we needed to take it to another higher level, these structures needed to be put in place, and that's what those guys did.
Neil, you said that you took over in 2015, and I feel that South Africa being a professional sports team if you took over 5 years ago, it would have been more than 15 years South Africa have entered the professional era of sport. And it's quite late to think that a technical director finally gets put in place a good 15 years later. I mean, what were some of your uphill battles? You said you had the provincial coaches that you had to put in place. But I mean, for an organization such as SAFA, how did you find the mentality of the people, changing it to a professional setup so that we could be competing amongst the best, such as your England's, your European top tier nations?
Look, I mean, I've got to be really truthful to say I was given the support, great support from the leadership at SAFA. They supported me. Yes, it became tougher and tougher as the years went on. The last couple of years, obviously, the financial constraints, because sponsors were getting less and less. To do all the programs around the provinces was becoming more and more difficult. So, but I must say, I got given the support from Danny and from Dennis Mumble and the Lux. You know, yes, it was tough, but putting those provincial technical officers in place was extremely difficult with some of the hierarchy within the provinces. You know, they had their own domains. They wanted to do it their own way. And yes, from a political side of things, from a management side of things in the province, they were entitled to that. But I believe none of them were technical enough to put the technical programs in place. And that's why we had to have these provincial technical officers in place. So there was a lot of resistance at first in some of the provinces. Some of the other provinces, like the Free State, they just sailed. They were really open to it. They grabbed it. And there was some really good work being done in some of the provinces. So, but there was always going to take time. This was new to a lot of the structures, and was not going to be a 1-2 year project. You know, we have 4-year cycles. It was 4-year cycles and put in place with FIFA with regards to all of what I've discussed in women's football and all the different departments, youth and everything. So all those plans were all in place. And from the point that you brought about with regards to the first technical director, yes, there were positions, but they were never official. And then it was even part of FIFA only really started embarking on us saying and seeing that technical directors within the member association was vitally important if they wanted to get programs put in place. And those technical directors had to have the buy-in of the CEOs or of the various associations. And that brought those programs within FIFA. And we had 3-4 workshops with FIFA as technical directors, which then we engaged and encountered and said, okay, these are our problems, and our problems in Southern Africa could be different to the problems in Central Africa, to the Caribbean, to all over. So there's a whole perspective that needed, and then sort of programs were put in place to make a technical director more efficient. Those being obviously your analysis of your environment when you first get there, and then to embark on programs that you could set up, structures that you could set up, and then once you've got the structure set up, how are you going to monitor them and evaluate them and come back to the beginning again? So there was various areas that you had to go through those different cycles. And fortunately in SAFA, we were way ahead of a lot of even in the rest of the world. We had a lot of those put into place already. So we weren't backward because of the past that we've had. The German influence from the past that always sent technical assistance to this country, the Dutch, all over, and we've got in dual programs. And then CAF also bought into it quite well. So yes, we're an African nation. It wasn't buying into the European way. No, we needed to do it our way. But you also, in this game of today, where you have technology at your finger point, available to you, you had to buy into the world structure of football.
No, certainly, and I think that we're doing quite a good job at it. Our women's team recently won the SAFA champs yet again for another time, and they come back from a World Cup. Neil, was it difficult putting structures in place for our women's team, knowing that when they go back to club football, some of them don't have professional contracts in place? How do you deal with a situation where these players that come from an amateur background and now all of a sudden you put them in a professional setup? Do you feel like sometimes it was forced upon them?
Look, I mean, it was very, very difficult, I have to say, because I'll come back to it now. I must start at the beginning, because SAFA had structures for women in football far more advanced than anywhere on the African continent. In fact, far more advanced than anywhere than a lot of the leading nations in the world. So I have to put that up front. We had Fran Hilton Smith, who had been part of the association for years and years, was a FIFA instructor. She was my assistant technical director. So, we had a woman within our structures of our technical office that was always caring about women's football. But where we were lacking is that the area where it was missing between the SASL Women's League and a national team. We had to put a national women's league in place, which has now taken, as you know, has been taken up. Because coming, as mentioned, out of very amateurish teams, training once or twice a week, and then trying to play for your country, which you know is at a much higher level. You needed to bridge that gap of fitness and technical aspects and tactical awareness and all those different aspects. So we did close the gap a lot, but a lot more work needs to be done. And that can be assisted by the PSL, I believe that each PSL team should have a women's team. And that should be a professional league for women. And they should be encountered to make sure that you cannot play in a PSL unless you have a professional women's team. And that should be that should be enforced. It can't be done overnight, but I believe down the road that should be enforced.
No, I think it will certainly help, because now you sort of put the ball in the court of the PSL teams for them to obviously put a women's team, and then we can start performing at a much higher level, because then you'll see that the base will grow as well. I think that is such a great idea.
Yeah, you've got a professional environment, a training environment, they've got everything, So they'll train in a more professional environment. They'll have all the aspects of the doctors, the physiotherapists, and everything that's linked to the analysts, to everything of that professional team. But I have to say that the professional teams have to buy into it, and I call them teams. They're not clubs. Clubs have structures from juniors all the way up, and that's the biggest. So there's a lot of work still to be done by clubs. I mean, in the PSL, I could name a handful that are actually clubs and not teams.
I think it's easy to state that they're teams, because if you have a couple of millions in your pocket, you can find yourself in the top tier league competition in South Africa.
Yeah, but also, it counts that you have to put structures in place. When I was a young player, I played for Durban City in the olden days, and we had a Durban City senior team, and I played there from under 6, under 8, and I wanted to wear that jersey. I mean, so each team, Pirates youngster from the age of 6, would love to put on that Pirates Buccaneers jersey from the age of 6. And that's where you get loyalty to the club. The Kaizer Chiefs, they played as a Kaizer Chiefs junior all through the years. I'm a Zulu, Sundowns, whatever team it is. Super Sport have got a great youth structure in place. But unfortunately, there's a lot of teams, and a lot of them up in Limpopo area, they don't have those kind of structures, and they need to put them in place. Groom their young talent from those areas.
No, definitely. It's structures that need to be put in place. And then I think that the support base would actually grow as well, where you'll find that your supporters actually love the team for the quality of football that they play and the interaction that they have with the team, other than just supporting the team for the fact that their parents or their family members sort of force them to support that team. Neil, you dwelled back into history. You took us a bit into your youth. Let's talk about some of that youth. You were involved in South African sport through a very dark period and a very difficult period in the 80s and the 90s, when South Africa obviously could not participate in international sport. You, as a professional footballer, Neil, how did you navigate your way through that time period and have the patience to stick it out, even though you couldn't play against other professional international teams?
Yeah, look, I mean, as I said, football was always my first love. I mean, when I was at school, I played for for my province and country and father in different sports, so I could choose. But football was always still my first love, and I was just part of it. As I said, I was lucky to have a brother, Mark, who played in the professional game. So watching him, and I aspired to play in the professional leagues. But as you say, it was difficult not being able to. So all I could aspire to be was to play for my club that I thought I wanted to play for, and that was Kaizer Chiefs. When I was growing up, I was wanting to play for Kaizer Chiefs. That was my end goal. And I was very, very lucky that I did have some of international football. But I was already 30 years of age when I played my first international game. So I got a little bit of part of it, but my brother did none of it. You know, official in football for international caps. So yes, and I played during times when my fellow players couldn't stay, were frowned upon to stay in the same hotels. You know, my black teammates, when I went to play in the Free State, it was difficult times for them to go into the same hotel. We used to smuggle them in the early evening, smuggle them into the rooms, and you know, so there were some difficult times in the 80s, but obviously it came much better in the 90s, and then we had a little bit of we had some really good years in the middle of the 90s.
No, definitely. Talking about the 90s, we had Madiba Magic. We had, I think it was just a jovial environment in South Africa in that time period. I mean, 1994, obviously Madiba gets released. 95, the Springboks win the World Cup. 96, Neil Tovey then leads South Africa to an African Cup of Nations trophy. Neil, that time period, South Africa hasn't played international football. Keeping this in mind, how did South Africa then weigh themselves against opposition, knowing that you couldn't weigh yourself against external opposition?
It's a difficult situation. You think you're better than you are sometimes. You know, when you first start out at the international, and we got taught valuable lessons, especially away from home. We're always going to be a competitive team in our own environment. But away from home, our initial start in 92 was really difficult. Against Nigeria and Zimbabwe, we got all beaten in those games away from home. But then you learn from those trips. You learn what to do, when to go, what food to take, how to travel, when to travel, what hotel, send people in advance. All these things that you learn very, very quickly, because I don't think anyone in this country's got any idea how it is to travel into Africa when all the odds are against you. You go into hotels that are not what you're accustomed to back home, So it's really difficult to play. The referees are not even nowhere close to being, for you. They're partisan to the home team. So it was really, really tough times. But you knew, and you grew, and you become better for it. You don't make excuses. You get on and do the work, and say, no, we're going to rise and be better for it. And I think that experience grew us as a team. Our team grew a lot, both more mentally, and that set us up for becoming a winning nation.
No, definitely a winning nation it was. I mean, Neil, going into AFCON, did you think that South Africa stood a chance? Your team that you were leading in that tournament stood a chance at this tournament?
No. Point bluntly, no. At the start of the tournament, we did not know what to expect. It was a new tournament for us. We knew we could be at home and we could compete. Don't think that we didn't believe in ourselves. No. But we decided, let's take it one game at a time. Let's see how we go. Let's not put pressure early pressure of talking about winning the trophy before we even got out of the group stages. And that's what we did. And, but I think of all the games that really set it up for us was that first game against Cameroon. I mean, Cameroon have always been powerhouse in the African continent, winners of a number of times, and players of great stature, And to win that opening game 3-0, it gave everybody that boost, that confidence. It gave the nation that belief and confidence. But there was still a lot of hard work still to be done within the progress within the tournament. We had to stay. We had to win our group because that would force us to stay in Johannesburg in altitude. We'd have to move hotels. There was a lot of thought process put into it. A lot of planning was put into it. What we wanted to do. We don't have to change our training base. So that was really important for us. And so once we accomplished that first milestone of winning the group, then going into the knockout stages, it was just obviously then still taking one game at a time. But I then believe we grew so much as a team and became stronger, much stronger mentally.
Definitely, and the nation certainly got behind you as the tournament went. As the tournament went on, the nation started getting behind you. The momentum started to gather behind the team, where more and more people found themselves involved in football and watching the South African national team. Neil, was there any tricky moments in that tournament that had you scratching your head, thinking that this might just be the end of the road?
No, not at all. I think the hardest game for us was the Algeria match. It was really, really wet. The conditions were suited them more than it suited us. They were a direct team. They were good at set pieces. So that glassy pitch with the wetness. But we rose above it and we grew as a team. And in fact, we turned it around and made it better for us. Got their big defenders turning, the nimble-footed guys like Shoes and Doc, and then got hold of the game, and we had to, We were very encouraged by each and everyone's performance within that game. We knew, that if somebody wasn't doing well, that the next person would set it alight at a given moment and get that guy back into the momentum. So. Yeah, but the Algeria match was probably the hardest. Went 1-0 up, then 1-0, and obviously Shoes was that blistering goal for 2-1. Made it really, really interesting. And we knew it was always, you could never settle because it was so difficult. The pitch was so difficult. You just had to see out time, and we did that.
No, definitely. And moving further on in the tournament, you then came to the final where you had a sold-out FNB stadium. I mean, you had the likes of Nelson Mandela there. What was that like, having his presence around you, knowing that you go in there and you're going to be representing your nation, and here you've got the former president of South Africa right there in your corner?
Yeah, look, I mean, it wasn't just a final that he was there. I mean, he came and visited us at our hotel a number of times. And obviously, he'd just been inaugurated, in 94. So he was a very busy man in 96 already. And when he couldn't visit the hotel, he would give me a call and say, Neil, how's things going? And, a call would come through from his office and him and say, look, just keep believing, keep momentum going. Don't get ahead of yourselves. And, so obviously that final, we knew, we could only do it for him, He was a statesman of unbelievable character. There's no ways we can now slip up in the final when we have him around us. And as you say, the Madiba magic was brilliant.
I'm such a late 90s kid where I get intrigued by these things. What was it like with your encounters with Madiba? I mean, that's a guy that I probably would have top of my bucket list to meet in my lifetime if he was still around. What were some of your favorite encounters with him?
Yeah, he's a man that if he walked into any room, if you walked into when we were eating or when we had meetings, he would greet each and every single person. It doesn't matter whether you with the team captain, the manager, the coach, the president of SAFA. He greeted each and every single person, the waiter, the cleaners. It didn't matter who you were, and have a discussion with you. It wasn't not just hi Neil, how are you today? No, hi Neil, and then breeze on past you. You're talking, how's the family? How's your kids? How's Sheldon? How's the daughters? And things like that. So that's how he was. He had a really thorough engagement with you before moving on to the next person to greet. And you'd greet each and every single person in that room.
Wow, that is quite amazing. I think I'll probably be shell shocked if the president of South Africa had to ask me how I actually was. Neil, going into that final, I mean, who one of your favorite players in the camp? I do know that Mark Williams was quite a character, obviously scoring the winning goal on the day. What other characters were there within the camp?
That was the beauty of our team. We had all those different characters. Mark Williams, who thought he could sing like Michael Jackson. Caesar Matang, he would also lead. And there would be other guys that, like Andre, would be very, very quiet. Andre Arnse engaged in his own little world before the game. And each Fish was Fish. He was unbelievable. He was still very, very young then, in his early 20s. So young at heart, full of nonsense. But we were a character, the team was full of characters, full of leaders. Yes, I was captain, but, we were a team full of leaders, which was great.
With you being captain, just taking it back a few moments, did you take any of the leadership qualities of Madiba and implement them in your setup and in your style of leadership?
Yeah, what I mentioned to you earlier was I made sure that every time I entered the room, I would do the same to my players, find out how they were, look them in their eyes, and see what mood they were in before each game, chat to them. If I saw they were nervous, then I'd try to calm them down and make a joke or, do something to make them laugh. So it was about reading your team, reading your teammates. Part of the captain's job, sussing out how they are, what the mood of the camp is. If they're too overconfident, bring them back down to earth. All these little things,
No, certainly. I mean, Neil, fast forward a couple of years, you then released your own book. And for those of us out there, and myself included, that haven't read your book, what can we expect in your book if one does intend on buying it?
The main important thing was there that, was to keep your humble feet on the ground, But most of all, any person on this earth can achieve if they really, really want it. I'm out of humble beginnings. I wasn't with a family that had money to splash around, and so I had my humble beginnings and had to work very, very hard for my achievements. But as I said, I was never ever satisfied with what I achieved ever. I'd always, if we had a victory, then I'd bring it down, analyze my game, but never satisfied with my own performance. I'd always look where I can better it, and I think that comes across in the book. That you have your such highs and lows, because I had my highs and lows in my career. I had my ups and downs and challenging times when my son was in hospital on his deathbed, and I never missed a match for Kaizer Chiefs. So all those things that you can equate to that bring you back down to earth. I've lived them. I've had my moments, but it's about really, really cherishing the good moments and being humble to yourself and humble to everyone.
And for those out there who would actually like to get their hands on a copy of your book right now, is it still available? Where can they get hold of it?
Yeah, they can. It's a Pelican. I can what I can do after is I can send you an email and you can distribute it to all your listeners, and you can broadcast it on where they can get it. In fact, it's going very, very cheaply at the moment. They've brought the cost down. They've got, I think, only 1,000 left in circulation at this moment in time. So, I can always just put it for who they can contact and offer to buy it. but it was in most bookshops, and I'm sure if they go in there and ask for it, it's called The Captain's Journey.
Well, the captain's journey it is. And for all of those out there, the listeners and the viewers at home, we will certainly share the details where you can get your hands on a copy of the captain's journey. For those of you who have questions for our captain, Neil Tovey, you can pop them in the comments section below. And yeah, I mean, you can call in, you can do whatever suits you. I mean, it's not every day when we have the captain of our country on our airwaves. Neil, I mean, moving forward now, I mean, you've got a book out. You then went, you're technical director of SAFA. Where does this leave you now? What do you have planned for the future? Where can we expect to see more of Neil Tovey?
At this moment in time, I'm having a sabbatical, a little bit of time off, concentrating on businesses, our businesses, I should say. Yeah, so just sort of having a little bit, because I've been traveling since the 70s. So I've been traveling for 4 years. Most weekends, I'm just having a little bit of time at home with the family, and yeah, so a little bit of rest at the moment in time.
No, definitely. Neil, I mean, looking at the state of South African football now, and you've been there from the so-called amateur days through to the professional era. If you compare South Africa off the pitch to the countries running the game, for that matter, where do you think are the key important areas where we can do better in order to catch up with those countries? I'm talking in terms of marketing, our media, in terms of coaching quality, just overall. I mean, how far off is South Africa realistically?
I think the only area where we are lacking is the funds at the moment. And the rest of the world, of those top nations that you're talking about, they have huge budgets. And you can give them a huge budget and you can do wonders. We have some of the best coaching structures in terms of coach education on the African continent and even in the world. We've done pro licenses. But CAF has taken control of the coach education licenses, and they've embarked on a huge new dawning, if I could call it that, where they want to make sure that the licenses on the African continent are streamlined and all of the same quality, and that our CAF A license in South Africa is no different to the CAF A license in Nigeria or something to that degree. So the standards are all equivalent, and each member association has to sign into that. So that's on a much better route and scale at the moment through CAF. And those licenses are of an equivalent of an UEFA A license, B license, of the same equivalent, same hours, same level. So we mustn't underestimate our own licenses in this country, and they will be acquainted with those licenses, because more and more coaches will be able to go and coach in Europe with our own licenses, which is great.
I mean, that's certainly exciting times, because at first you'd see that a lot of the footballing professionals would rather go for the UEFA license over a CAF license, and it's nice to see that the quality of our licenses in CAF could certainly compete with the best in the world. I mean, Neil, from a sporting professional perspective, there's so many sporting professionals that come out of university and out of colleges, good colleges. I mean, has this helped the administration of football somewhat in this country?
Yeah, I think the educational side of things, the colleges and obviously the varsity football has a major role to play. Because when I was there, one of the plans was also to get our licenses, and I'm talking now about our B and C licenses, into the training colleges, so that anyone that is in college that's doing a sports science degree can then also embark on a D and a C level coaching course, and put those qualities and know exactly how the footballers are thinking, how the coaches are thinking, if you want to put your sports science into the game. So those thought processes are all there already. So the varsity structures, and as you spoke from an admin point of view, we needed more and more people getting into our admin structures to run our leagues in our development areas, So it's essential that gets done, and it'll be wonderful. It needs a lot more coming together with the various people to put that into play.
No, definitely. I think that it certainly helps with a lot of professionals coming through out of universities, out of varsities, certainly making our sport in this country so much more professional, knowing that we can obviously compete with the rest of the world, knowing that we have so much going on behind the scenes that work to our disadvantage. However, we can compete at a high level compared to the rest of the world. Neil, thank you so much for your time this evening. I really, really appreciate it. I mean, it was great listening to some of your stories and what you've been through in order to be an inspiration and a motivation to all of those younger, aspiring footballers and coaches out there. Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it from myself and the rest of the Salam Media team. Thank you so, so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
No problem. That was Neil Tovey, the former technical director at SAFA. He also has a AFCON title under his belt, 1996. Could be the last time Bafana was that competitive on a national and international stage, for that matter. Yep, that's the sports talk with myself, Dakir Dawood. Until next week, you'll be joined next by Safaraz Takolia, who'll be taking you through up until 9 o'clock this evening. A jam-packed schedule he has planned for you. Thank you so much. That's it from me. We're going to link to an ad break and then you'll be joined by Safaraz. That's it from me, Dakir Dawood. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.